Welcome to Mysteries, Monsters, and Mayhem.
I'm Shannon Lawrence.
And I'm MB Partlow.
Quick content warning before we get started. This podcast may contain language and disturbing content, so enter at your own risk. Hi.
Heidi-ho.
Heidi-ho, neighbor.
I do miss the neighbor Wilson from
We've been rewatching
Tool
it.
Time.
I know people are like, Tim Allen. I don't care. But
what was the name of the...
Home Improvement.
Home Improvement, that's it. Tool Time was the fictitious show. Somebody used that the other day and I laughed at it.
So it was stuck in your head.
Anyway, Miss Wilson, the next door neighbor whose face you never saw.
Because, I don't know, I might have already bitched about this. Somebody posted and they were like, here I am watching Home Improvement and he's such a sexist dick and it's them peddling that. And I was like, okay, but he's wrong at the end of every episode.
Yeah.
That's the whole point and everything. I understand he's conservative and that right now that means he's the enemy. But he made sure he was wrong. At the end of every episode, he learned he was wrong for being
whatever his
masculine pay or whatever, and that's him. And then in his new show, his wife is super liberal and he's, of course, Tim, and he's conservative, and she zings him regularly. And
I've only seen a couple of... I don't think I've seen an entire episode of the new show, which is
very
no longer
self-aware, is my point. And also on his show, he made sure that the writers were a mix.
Yeah.
What more do you want from him? I figure there aren't many liberals that are that willing to meet partway, so...
That's true.
Whatever. I say this as a staunch liberal. So, yeah. So we both went on vacations.
We did.
To the south, no less.
I know. It was scary. Parts of it.
Where in Florida, where were you?
At one point, we were at a wedding, and I have to say, I have a niece who got married. It was probably one of the most beautiful weddings I've ever been to, because it was very, very positive and very loving. I mean, the groom walks out to walk down the aisle, and people just, applauded. And some woman yelled, "I'd marry that." Oh. But in a funny, not in a gross drunk way.
Okay.
But we were in the town of Arcadia. And I'm like, why the fuck are we in Arcadia? It's in the middle of nowhere. Yeah. And it's a rodeo town and it's an antiquing town.
Okay. And
so we all get in there on Friday. And the guy who owned the hotel where we were staying says, "Did you park in front of the hotel?" Of course, we all did to unload our cars. And he was like, "Okay, I will need you tonight to move your car to the parking lot in the back because there's an event going on tomorrow." I hear the word bike. I think bicycle. No, it was a biker rally.
Nice.
But, so it's Florida. So the youngest biker is maybe 50. And everything ended at 5. So there's a little tiny park right next to the hotel, and there are bands playing, and I'm like, well, that's going to be, because I'm thinking we're going to get home from the wedding, the bands are so, no, everything ended at 5, and I would say by 5:30, you couldn't tell the streets were cleaned, everything was gone.
Okay, but fun stuff ending at 5 is like a nightmare.
You're just
like
getting
we were
there.
talking about going to Alice Springs in Australia, because that's where my husband had to travel for work. And so he was being offered permanent type, but it would have been TDY 3 years or whatever. But anyway, so that was an
wait
option.
a minute, you're thinking about moving?
No, this is in the past. Pre-kids.
Okay.
We didn't because I was going through IVF.
Ooh.
You don't move in the middle of IVF.
No.
No. So, but they were, you're looking at it and he's like, but just so you know, in the summer months, when it's their summer,
right?
Then everything shuts down afternoon, basically. There's a time, I don't know if it was 2 or 3, I don't remember now. And it might be way different now, but when he was going there, that was 20 years ago.
Mm-hmm. Wow.
He was like, it all because it's too hot. So everything just kind of shuts down and you stay home. And I'm like,
does it open back up?
Fuck that.
Like the siesta in Spain?
I don't think so.
Well, that sucks.
So yeah, that was not going to be what I would do very well in like Italy and Portugal, where you have dinner at 8 p.m., 9 p.m. You all sleep in. That would be great. So, yeah, no.
But yeah, so we walked around, and because the wedding wasn't until later in the afternoon, so we all walked around during the day, and it was like, there were some very interesting wardrobe choices. I saw more of some people than I felt I really, truly needed to see. And some of them still had those outfits on at breakfast the next morning. And I was like, just guessing you're not headed to church in that outfit.
This isn't Cocoa Beach.
I was just like, wow, that's a lot of your skin. I am not your dermatologist. I don't need to see that much of your skin.
We did not see all that skin in Savannah, Georgia. There was a surprising amount of graffiti.
Really?
Like, it was pretty clean there, but graffiti on historic buildings. Because we stayed at an Airbnb in the historic district.
Oh.
So that we could just walk everywhere.
They had 17
which
doors.
Almost killed me. My God. That was the most horrifying Airbnb. And it was, we could hear everything they did upstairs. There was some sort of machine, it turns out, unless they actually provided a home gym with a jump rope. And then it was a machine, like a washing machine or something. And they liked it no matter who stayed there, because we were there with two different groups of people.
Mm-hmm. Oh, God.
The last night, Sierra was just yelling stuff so that they could hear everything. Like, we can hear you. Yeah, a bunch of douchebags who had absolutely no thought of anybody else in that building. And we were in a basement.
Yep.
So we were in the basement of the building, and they rented out the rest of the house, the people who came for the last 2 days.
Mm-hmm.
So we had to get up at...
Oh, you had to get up at the crack of dawn when you came home.
Yeah.
Ugh.
We had to be there 2 hours ahead of time. So, yeah. It was like 4 a.m. We had to get up.
Which for you is when you're getting ready to go to
2
bed.
a.m. here? Not even. I'm still wide awake then.
That's true.
I did manage to, because I had way overdone it. The body cannot take it anymore. Walking cobbled streets and sidewalks and doing 10,000 to 20,000 steps a day was not my friend. So
I get that.
I just passed out cold here once I got home. Like, no. But it's a nice little airport, though. I like a little airport. That's so much better. Yes, we learned that Southern women are angry. Everybody has a reason for that. Everybody has a reason for it. I got well, it's because you were Yankees. No, these were women in cars trying to run us down. You didn't know we were Yankees.
Oh my God, in Tampa? When the light turns green, you better have anticipated that and have your foot already on the accelerator.
Oh no, we had like white crossing signs, a little white man saying walk. We had stop signs that nobody would stop at. Yep. So I had a bit of a standoff with somebody, and it brought me great joy. Because they wouldn't fucking stop. So we're stuck in at the median in the middle of the road because they're supposed to stop.
Yeah.
And they didn't. So I finally just stepped out in front of somebody and stopped and looked at them and pointed at the sign. And then slowly made my way across the fucking road. Which is funny because when I did it, then the people that were waiting also went.
Of course.
And then I got to the other side and the bitch drove past me. And when she was past me, because she was a chicken shit, then she honked at me.
Oh, no.
Yeah. And so I just laughed and waved at her. I was like, have a lovely day. I won that one. Your honk is not the last word.
I pulled into a little shopping area to go to a Publix, my new favorite grocery store. And I'm going very slowly. I'm in a rental car. I'm in a town I don't know. So I'm driving. I'm not Evel Knieveling through the parking lot. And this car starts to back out. And it's parked like 2 or 3 cars down this row. And it starts back out of its parking space. Well, I don't pay any attention. I mean, I notice it, but I'm not. Why would I pay attention to it? It keeps backing up. It keeps backing up. So I toot the horn. I'm trying to be polite. I'm like, hello, I'm here. Please don't hit me. It keeps backing up. And I look at Joe and I'm like, they're going to fucking hit us. So from 2 or 3 slots down this row, they backed all the way out into the main thoroughfare of the parking lot. And Joe's just shaking his head because once I realized they weren't going to stop, I just laid on my horn and continued to lay on it until they got out of my way. And they actually stopped at one point and gestured friendly, one-fingered waves. And I was like, nuh-uh. I know how irritated you are now by my horn, so I'm going to continue to let you know what an asshole you are. I was just like, I get it. It just was like, no, you don't get to back up that far into the main aisle.
Really making me rethink my us maybe moving there. So I'm like, I don't live with these people. But people in Oregon are also assholes and there's way less sun, see? So I'm trying to find somewhere coastal to live where people aren't miserable dickbags.
And it's not
and
cold.
Where I have sun and it's not cold. It's very complicated.
The Northeast is pretty much out.
Because otherwise I would live on Prince Edward Island or off of Maine. But it's cold.
It's dreary.
And then also Sweden's out for that reason. Otherwise I would love Sweden. Very cold. And dark.
What about England?
Ew. There's no sun there. I said somewhere with sun. What the fuck?
What about the south of France?
I'm not a fan of the French. But I've considered Italy. But I'm like, if I'm escaping politics, probably Italy's not where I want to be. But maybe I won't care because I'll be in Italy. And I won't be as invested in the politics there.
That could be.
I don't know, man. It turns out Coloradans are actually really nice. And I hate that because I hate Colorado right now. I really do. And I'm like, why are they the nicest people, though? How am I supposed to move where people are more rude? Also, 2 fucking people had Georgia accent. Any accents.
Oh.
2 people. One lady, she straight up talked like Paula Deen. She was our waitress at the Pirate House. And then some random dude. Everybody else sounded like a flat, boring northerner. And I was like, this is not why I'm in Georgia.
See, because I was at a family event, half of the people there were from New Jersey. So there wasn't a whole lot of accent there at the wedding.
Well, then a friend of mine moved to Texas. And she's like, they really don't. There's not a lot of Texas accents here. And I'm like, because you're in a big city.
Mm-hmm.
You go to the small cities, that's where you get the accents. Rural East Texas, accents. Mm-hmm. But Austin and Dallas and all that, not really.
Mm-mm.
But Savannah's not a big city. I expected more Southern accents, and I'm disappointed. But it actually was a fun trip. It just broke me physically. I just started recovering. It's been over a week.
God.
It's the fibro. It takes longer to regenerate all that. So I was just like dead tired and in so much pain for so long. But I'm easing back off the ibuprofen, so we're good. Good God. We went to a Edgar Allan Poe themed restaurant. That was fun. I got a salad there and I was way fucking excited to have a vegetable. Let me tell you, that wasn't fried and covered in butter and bacon.
So Thing 2 was in Charleston, South Carolina, and same thing. Went to an Edgar Allan Poe themed restaurant, except the one she went to, I think she said was overpriced and not worth it.
Huh.
But after a couple of days, they were like, my God, what do you have to do to get a fresh vegetable?
Well, because we found this magical, like, all-night convenience store and gas station. In fact, it is the only gas station I passed in Savannah. So, like, well, it must all be in the actual, like, suburban areas or something. And that's the only reason we were able to eat our first night there. But, like, all night you could get, like, fresh fried chicken, fried catfish, from, like, all this shit. And they already had breakfast stuff, so if I could have eggs, could have, like, this ham and egg and cheese casserole they had.
Ooh.
Yeah. But... so anyway, they had like the little deli shelves where, oh, here's sandwiches and here's some salads. But the salads were just absolute. There was not one salad that didn't have meat and cheese and all this shit on top of it, right? And then I was like, well, maybe they'll have like a little veggie cup, like some cut up carrots and celery.
Cup or a veggie cup, yeah.
Indeed. The only one they had was grapes. And I was like, well, that's pure sugar and that's not helping me here. I would like some fiber and just vegetable. Now, there were technically vegetables in my shrimps and shrimp and grits. Shrimp, there were shrimps. Shrimp and grits. Shrimp cocktail. But with this delightful but heavy cream sauce on it.
Oh my God, I love shrimp and grits.
Technically, I have eaten a vegetable, but I never actually figured out where it was in there because there were like red peppers or something in it. And I was like, I did eat some. They just weren't recognizable. I had collard greens, but again, I was looking for a vegetable not coated in butter and bacon.
And stewed within an inch of its life.
Yes.
Although they're delicious.
They were really good collard greens. It was at a barbecue joint. But
somebody, who do we know who said nobody really eats collard greens? They just put them out for the Yankees. I know who said it. And I was like, no, I like them. And other people were like, wait, I like them.
But you're a Yankee.
Yeah, I know. We also eat dandelion greens. I don't personally, but my family did.
Oh. I made dandelion bread with dandelions picked from our yard when the kids were little, and I still did shit like that. It's supposed to be very good for you. That was a lot of work. Just sitting there pulling out the yellow, the little blossoms to make it. Woo!
The things we did.
That's right.
Did you make the baby food?
I did. I had the little grinder.
Yes.
But then I was like, there was a very brief period where I used that grinder, and then I was like, he just eats whatever. I'm just going to give him chili. I'm not going to grind it up for him, for fuck's sake. He's not a bird.
We did it and froze it in the ice cube trays and then popped them out so you could. And then I was like, for thing one, you could just open a can of green beans, and she would just eat room temperature green beans like it was some kind of delicacy. And I'm like, why am I torturing myself? But I knew a woman. I was working in a pyramid scheme at the time, pyramid chef, and she was talking about she had a baby. She had I think she had 3 kids. I can't remember if it was a boy and a couple of girls or a girl and a couple. Anyway, she had 3 kids, and then there was a few years, and then she and her husband had a baby. And she was like, oh, I don't have any trouble getting whatever the kid's name was, Sheila, to eat vegetables. I'm like, you don't? How do you do it? I put butter and salt on it. And and I was like, oh, fuck.
It was like the doctors get my daughter to gain weight. They were like, well, just put butter on all the vegetables. And I was like, so then she won't eat vegetables later. That's what you're saying to me, right? Like, she'll always have to have butter. No, I'm not going to fucking coat it with butter.
No. And there was no reason to coat this child's stuff with butter and salt.
Sweet potatoes. I could get her to eat baked sweet potatoes. And I was like, there you go. Like, that is a better solution than buttering all of our vegetables. The things that she needs to gain weight. No, this is just her weight at this point. My God, I'm so tired of that conversation. All right.
Okay. I'm calling this piece The Heathen Hubbub. So there are rabbit holes, and then there are rabbit holes. So recently there was a headline that caught my eye, and it said, D11 teacher placed on leave. So my kids are in D11, or they're not now, they were. Your kids are in D11. Uh-huh. So, and I think a lot of us automatically, when we hear that, our mind automatically goes to sexual misconduct, which is not what this was. But I, of course, had to click on it. Oh, why was the teacher suspended? And I wanted to know if it was anybody I knew. So the subheadline was, School District Investigates Links to White Supremacist Group.
All I have to do is look at the council there, whatever it is, the board.
Oh, don't even get me started. I have plenty to say and none of it good. Or very little of it good. Anyway, so now that I was going to say, it didn't surprise me to see this because not that we don't have people running for city office on the strength of the hate groups that they belong to and trying to bludgeon us all into submission with their very white, very male interpretations of the Bible. Fucking white men, man. There was one at Cheers yesterday, and he came walking down the middle of the aisle. I'm in their thing too. And she steps to the side because we both moved to the side to go around him, and he continues to walk right down the middle. So she squishes to the side, and I was like, no, you do not get to take up my space. So he like brushed against me. Well, I brushed against him, whatever. And he was like, oh, excuse me. And I said, yes, you are taking up rather a lot of the aisle. It's just like, fucker, it's not your store.
Right.
Anyway.
It must be nice to live in that bubble. You know what? Total aside, if we were getting on the plane, probably this was not the place to be having this conversation, but that's what my sister and I are good for. So we're in that, whatever the walkway thing is that is the tunnel, the jetway that's leading you out to get on the plane. And we're all backed up. And so I'm talking about, hey, I read this book, Stiff by Mary Roach.
I love that book.
One of the things that stuck out with me is she said, in general, men are going to be the bulk of the survivors in an airplane crash. And an airplane crash that's not like everybody died on impact.
Right.
And she said, and the studies show that this is because the men will just shove everybody out of their way in their fear, their little panic run as they get off the plane, right? And so then the other people left behind and they're burning or they're drowning or they're whatever the hell is happening on said plane. And this guy behind us is all, that's not my generation. That's the new generation. And I'm like, this book is actually rather old.
Yes, it is.
And he's like, no, I've been tested. I've been shot at twice. Like, completely into our conversation to start bragging about how he's been shot twice. Or shot at twice. And he's actually been shot once, I think. And like all this stuff. And I know what I do between fight and flight. And that's fight. And I was like, well, that's kind of what they're doing. But okay, it's a little bit of both, don't you think? If you're actually shoving people out of your way and trampling them. Yeah. In her book, she's going into like, the men are trampling people. And anyway, it ends up in this whole like, and we're humoring him, and he doesn't know we're humoring him.
I wish I could have been there.
Because my sister's a cop, so she's been shot at quite a few times, actually.
Yeah.
And for the record, she has yet to actually have shot up another person.
I'm kudos for not going, what are you doing that makes people shoot at you?
Mm-hmm.
So I would have been like, oh. Why do you think that keeps happening?
Anyway, that was just a white man. I just had to throw that in.
Okay, so at this point, I've decided not to name the teacher in question. The investigation is ongoing, although he has been suspended without pay.
And it is in the news.
And it is in the news. You Google it, you'll find it. District 11. So,
that's Colorado District 11.
Yes, Colorado Springs. So what triggered the... Okay, so... The Colorado Springs anti-fascists was a post from and I apologize if I'm butchering the pronunciation, the Asatru Folk Assembly, which we're going to call the AFA, which will confuse the fuck out of everybody from Colorado Springs because that's the Air Force Academy.
Yeah.
But it's the Asatru Folk Assembly. So they had posted something welcoming this man as the newest folk builder apprentice for the Uenshof district. I do not know what that means. Oh. The AFA has been identified by the Southern Poverty Law Center as a white supremacist group. And I just am like, who are these people? So weird things catch my attention, but I'm like, who are they?
Are they big in Colorado?
They're trying to be big everywhere. Mm. They're not super big in Colorado.
Okay. So
the AFA began as the Viking Brotherhood in 1969. And it's now, there's so many things in this. Like, I wrote it and I went, really? It's now the largest neo-Volkish hate organization in the U.S.
Neo-Volkish?
Yes. So it can either be Volkish or folkish. It's either VOLK or FOLK. And apparently there's no difference. So if I say one or the other, it means the same thing. So it's based on primitive beliefs about ethnocentrism, which is basically the whole us good, you bad, no matter who you are. And they have some really fun ideas about gender too.
I'm sure they do.
Get in the kitchen. Often
this all goes hand in hand.
Grow things and grow vegetables and children. That's really what it is. And most recently, they supported the idea that COVID And the COVID vaccinations were developed solely to keep the white man down. I don't know how you get there. I don't even know, even if you don't believe in science, I don't know how you get there. That's, because that's what's wrong with our society, is that white men do not have enough power or control over their own destinies.
It's astounding how many online think that.
Yeah, so this particular group relies on the romanticized myths and imagery of pre-Christian Viking culture.
But, okay.
So their religion is sometimes called Odinism. Hello, Thor. Hello, Loki. Other times they use the labels of heathenism or paganism.
They don't get to.
So it gets really murky when you look deeper into paganism. Because paganism itself is not inherently racist.
It's often the opposite.
Yes.
But honestly, isn't paganism just a really wide definition of not believing in this a deity, or I don't know.
So I've
never defined it.
I have not discerned the difference between pagans and heathens, and I hope I'm not aggravating someone who knows the difference. So the use of folk or folkish or volkish is shorthand for Northern European white.
Oh.
So, I know. From the AFA website, Asatru is an expression of the native pre-Christian spirituality of Europe. More specifically, it is the religion by which the ethnic European folk have traditionally related to the divine and to the world around them. So, you're thinking this goes back to the old country. The AFA was founded in California in 1994 by Stephen McNallen.
Yeah.
It's been recognized. It is an official 501c3 nonprofit religious organization. So the Viking Brotherhood had evolved into the Asatru Free Assembly. I have the years, but you don't care. I mean, I do have the timeline. But what happened was it split into the folkish Asatru Alliance, which is very traditional, and the Universalist Troth, which is an American-based international heathen organization based on inclusivity. So that was the big, is it schism?
Yeah.
Between them was, are we open to everyone, or are we very narrowly accepting only Northern Europeans, white Northern Europeans?
But it's not just white Northern European men.
No.
Because there's always women who are like,
women,
hate us? Great, we want to be part of your group.
There are women in this group, and they do hold some offices. Not the grand poobah.
Yeah.
But they do hold titles.
Aren't they special?
It's just, so McNallen, who started this, he expounded on an integral link between ancestry and religion, between biology and spirituality. I mean, their biology is related to a hell of a lot. Spirituality?
Honestly, I don't understand why I haven't just made a cult yet.
Right? Well, you would have to move to California first.
I was born there, so technically.
There you go. You're qualified to start your own religion. So in 1999, the organization acquired some land in Northern California that they wanted to use for agriculture and religious worship, because they are very big on being self-supportive as to the extent that they can. But they never actually held title to the land. And after a meeting hall was built there, it's called a Hof, the donor rescinded his offer. Didn't say why, didn't go into that. In the late 90s, now are you familiar with the Kennewick Man?
Yes.
So, in the late 90s, fossil remains were discovered near Kennewick. And...
You don't say.
And apparently this was a big... I don't remember hearing anything about this at the time, but I believe I was giving birth in the late 90s, so... I have
a thing for history. So.
I was preoccupied. So the TLDR is when these skeletal remains were first discovered, the first archaeologists who examined it were like, oh, this is of European descent. And that's since been completely disproven. So the AFA was tangled up in the conflict surrounding the Kennewick man because they mistakenly claimed him as an ancestor and wanted the remains. Yes. So these remains, which are 8,000 to 9,000 years old, is actually related to several Northwest tribes of indigenous Americans.
Duh.
I mean, shocker. And that is what we call oversimplification to move the story along.
Yeah.
They wanted to touch the remains. They didn't just want, they wanted to touch them. They wanted to fondle 8,000-year-old bones. May of 2017, things start to go to shit because first Facebook kicks them off the platform because of hate speech. In 2018, they were added to the Southern Poverty Law Center's list of hate groups. And in fact, that launched a whole new category of hate group for the Southern Poverty Law Center called Neo-Volkish. The Anti-Defamation League has them listed as an extremist group. And in December of 2019, 2 members of the National Guard were discharged after their involvement in leadership roles in an organization closely linked to the AFA. And they also lost their full-time jobs.
Good.
It's like the people in, was it Charlottesville?
Yeah.
Who are marching with their wives. Like, if you can't even make a torch, motherfucker, stay home.
Your tiki torches.
They stole their wives' patio tiki torches from Hobby Lobby. How fucking fierce is that?
So fierce. So fierce.
Don't even get me started on all these big white babies going, I can't drink Budweiser anymore.
I was cracking up about that yesterday. It's like, what is it? Kid Rock and Travis Tritt.
Travis Tritt, who, never mind.
Well, I was laughing. I was telling my husband, I was like, it's like the Nike thing all over again, where they go and they buy it.
Yeah, so they can shoot it.
So,
or
like,
burn
liberals get mad and they won't give you money, right?
Yeah.
Chick-fil-A. Oh, well, we won't eat at Chick-fil-A because we won't give the corporation money. And conservatives go, I'm going to buy this and destroy it. And then the company laughs all the way to the bank. Stop. Yep. Like, what is this? I blow up this Bud. Okay, cool. They already got the money. They don't care if you drink it or blow it up.
I'm going to shoot the cans. Boy, that's teaching someone a lesson.
I don't know whoever gets splattered with it, I suppose. But yes, it just cracks me up because I'm like, there's 2 very different ways to do all this. That's one way.
So, of course, after I look up what exactly the AFA is, I have to take it a little bit further. So I went to their website, which
ooh, you're marked.
I look up so much weird shit that
horror author.
Yeah. I'm just innately curious.
I did a lot of research on biological warfare for a while back in the day when you had to check it out at the library well, whatever. I was already a lot. I checked out like every book that had anything to do with it for a story that I never wrote.
Well, that's okay.
It was interesting. That's how I learned you can make anthrax real easy.
So yes, I'm probably on somebody's list somewhere. So, but the AFA currently has 4 Hoffs, which are these meeting lodges in the U.S. One of them is in a former Lutheran church in Murdock, Minnesota. And apparently when I think they bought the church, but more than 120,000 Minnesotans have signed a petition to stop allowing them to use the building. So
I don't think that's going to work because they bought it. And this is all about free.
Yeah, they can use it for whatever they want. The 4th Hoff.
Good for the Minnesotans.
Yes. The 4th Hoff, guess where that's opening?
Oh, here?
No, Florida.
Oh,
Okay, so here's the thing that cracked me up the most. Because of the discriminatory practices of the AFA, heathen and neo-pagan organizations have banded together to refute those beliefs and to basically say those guys don't represent heathens or neo-pagans. Mm-hmm. I'm like, if you can get these disparate groups of heathens and neo-pagans to band together against you, those guys, they suck. So further down the rabbit hole, I have to read the newsletter because, of course, they have a newsletter. And I have to tell you two things. It reads like pretty much any church newsletter you've ever read, if you've ever read one. And secondly, they really need someone who knows how to proofread. However, I think that can be said for a lot of self-produced newsletters. So here's something that jumped out at me, and this was written by the leader, and I did not write down his title because I can't even begin to pronounce it. So he's writing, the leading cause of death in the Asatru Folk Assembly is overwhelmingly suicide. Suicide is killing a shocking number of white men. Because I am a curious cat, I went to the CDC and said, what is killing white men? Suicide's number 8.
Oh.
Yeah, so I'm like...
Let's look at the LGBTQ community and see what that number looks like.
Yeah. Or the indigenous community.
Yeah.
That's where it's highest. The top 2 are heart disease and cancer. So I'm like, so you have to ask, I would think, if you are truly concerned about your people, you have to ask yourself, this is not the leading cause of death of white men in the general population. Why are people in our group killing themselves? Mm-hmm. What's the cause there? There was a reference to the 10,000 horrors plaguing modern civilization. And I don't know if you could hear it, but 10,000 horrors was capitalized. I don't know what they were referring to. Have they met me? I'm like,
intriguing.
But I'm only one. Then there was a reference to the olden days. And then later in the sentence, the writer actually specified 2010. It's like, dude, you do not know what that phrase means. And that was this month's newsletter. So I'm like, it was 13 years ago. I got underwear older than that. I'm like, and now I've totally lost my place. There was a rationale. Oh my God. There was a whole thing about why bangers and mash are better than tacos.
Okay.
Because
that's the hill they want to die on.
Because bangers and mash connect you to your ancestors. You know, so there were updates on projects that they're working on, requests for all kinds of volunteers, requests for donations, explanations of the seasonal celebrations that are coming up, member profiles. Here was an interesting one. This one was, for me, this was a big red flag. Maybe not everyone will think that. There was an article about getting your affairs in order so that your final wishes can be respected.
Yeah.
I'm totally behind that. This was accompanied by a call for their members to submit original signed copies of their will to the AFA so they can ensure your final wishes are respected. Just in case you're curious, your church has no fucking say whatsoever in what happens to your remains after you die.
No.
Unless you make them the beneficiary of your will. And even
I'm sure they're hoping for that.
And even then they don't have a say about what happens to your body. It's whoever your next relative is. There is paperwork you can fill out. Because if you had a power of attorney, and I don't know why you would do this, but you made this church, gave this church your power of attorney.
I feel like there's a lot of cults that do that.
However, a power of attorney dies when you die. It has no bearing after your death. So, and we all know how I know this. So yeah, I just thought, I was totally, because there was some good stuff in this newsletter. Don't get me wrong.
There always will be. Everything can't be hateful. And
when I started reading this particular article, and the newsletter is like 30 fucking pages, so I didn't read every word, but I was like, okay, yeah, get your affairs in order. I am very much for that. But then it was like, but give us the copy so we can make sure. I'm like, no, that's not your job. So then I looked at, and under the who we are, you go to the website and the top, who we are. It has all this la 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 good stuff. But then at the bottom of the page, there's another line of menu points, and it's the declaration of purpose. So I read, when you get to point number 2, it says, if the ethnic European folk cease to exist, Asatru would likewise no longer exist. Let us be clear. By ethnic European folk, we mean white people. This is directly from the website. It is our collective will that we not only survive, but thrive. You hardly see white people anymore. And continue our evolution in the direction of the infinite. All native religions spring from the unique collective soul of a particular race. Religions are not arbitrary or accidental. Body, mind, and spirit are all shaped by the evolutionary history of the group and are thus interrelated. Asatru is not just what we believe, it is what we are. Therefore, the survival and welfare of the ethnic European folk as a cultural and biological group is a religious imperative for the AFA.
Okay, doke.
So, and then, of course, they do have a little bit to say about women's roles.
Oh. It would be disappointing if they didn't.
Yes, it can be hard to know where we as women fit in today's modern society. What exactly our role is, our purpose. Guerrilla feminism. Right? Guerrilla feminism has torn the fabric of collective female self-awareness. And we are all led from birth on a journey away from ourselves, destined for confusion and depression via mass media marketing. As a result, we are lost adrift. We are the victims of an ideological war, one that has taken us so far from our natural state as nurturing mothers, spiritual vessels, creators, goddesses, that many of us barely recognize those aspects of ourselves anymore.
It's rough. It's a tough life.
It's tough being a vessel.
It is.
So, the takeaway from this story, as I see it, I am certainly all for people examining their roots. Where do you come from? Does your family come from? And if it's important to you, following or studying the religion that your family, that your people believed in, that's great. I don't have any problem with that. My suggestion would be, if you're getting involved in some group, read the fine print. Look at who is included in this group, but more importantly, who is excluded. Are they lifting up one group at the expense of another? So that was just, I'm like, really? How do you incite the heathens against you?
I don't think it's that hard.
And here's my theological question for the day, which after I was looking into this, I thought, okay, so, and just play along with me here for a second. To a Christian, what's worse, a heathen or an atheist? That's the look I get.
I'm both, so
everybody looks at me and goes, why is who hurt you?
The Christians. The white men.
Because I'm like, is it more offensive? And I don't mean who do they hate? I just mean which is.
Oh no, for some of them it's who they hate.
Well, yes,
go ahead, proceed.
But just I'm thinking, is it more offensive that someone doesn't believe in any God, or that they believe in a different God or gods
or entities? There's not necessarily gods.
Okay.
Yeah. Interesting question.
So that's
so. Speaking of tribes, I guess I've been sheltered about the 12 tribes or whatever they're called around here. So for anybody who lives around here,
I was just talking about them because there was a Yellow Deli in Arcadia.
Yellow Deli is also one of their businesses.
Yes.
Okay. So here it's Manitou Springs. We have the Mate Factor, and everybody just in general knows this is owned by a cult, the 12 tribes, and they were involved in possibly involved in some fire up beyond Boulderish, Denverish, somewhere between them or something. Like last year or the year before, they thought that they were part of it, but I don't know if that was.
I think they determined they were not.
So anyway, I just kind of thought that this was a Colorado thing, and that Mate Factor was a Manitou thing. Nope. here we are in Savannah, and there's a mate factory there because the 12 tribes are present there too. So that was interesting. And I was like, well, here I was, just assuming that was just here.
And they also do the yellow deli because I was watching a clip of some comedian and I can't remember what city he was in, but he said, I was asking people, where do you go eat? You know, I want something to eat after the show. And somebody's like, the yellow deli. And everybody's like, yeah, it's good, but you know, it's a cult, right? And he's like, wait, what the fuck? What do you mean it's a cult? And he goes, of course I went. And it was delicious, but it's a cult.
Yeah.
So then in Arcadia, I'm like, oh, yellow deli. And everybody's like, what is your problem?
I've been to the mate factory like 3 times in totality in all the time I've lived here. And I swear, they're angry about you patronizing their company. I was like, they're not friendly. They're not at all friendly. And I'm like, then why are you here?
Why would we go there?
I don't know. We took my mom there for funsies. We were like, you want to go to a cult cafe? That was the last time I went. And before that, it had been ages. So, anyway.
That's the kind of thing my children would do. Hey, Mom!
You want
to go to a cult cafe or a haunted...
Well, we had dinner down there somewhere. I don't remember where. And we were like, let's go to the mate factory!
So what are you going to talk about?
All right. I'm still on I'm going to try and find... things where men aren't the bad guy every time because I feel like I don't want this to be a podcast all about hating white men because I love plenty of white men, y'all. I know that there are more good. I also, when I make my comments about conservatives and liberals, first of all, there are plenty of both I don't like. And then I have plenty that I do like in there. Fairly middle of the road in some ways. And in others, very fully liberal. So, hopefully that's been clear. But anyway, I'm doing these 2 men. Lars Mittank and Anton Pilipa. Lars Mittank was born in Berlin, Germany in 1986. What?
I'm sorry, but when you said I'm doing these 2 men, I wanted to say just Jeffrey.
You know what? They were both pretty cute, actually.
Okay, sorry. I will stop being 12 now.
June 30th, I already thought of it when I said it, and I was like, fuck it, I'm not correcting it. People can think whatever they want. Have a laugh. June 30th, 2014, at 28 years old, the plant worker who helped at his parents' house after work said goodbye to his girlfriend, headed off to Bulgaria with friends. Now, these were old school chums. They stayed at the Golden Sands Resort in Varna. It was a beach resort, hanging out at the beach during the day and going to clubs at night. He ate really light throughout the trip, but was otherwise quite normal. So this is something his friends would get, like he would have a light sandwich or a light salad, and they weren't sure what was up with that. But on July 6th, they were at a club where some other German nationals happened to be hanging out, and Lars got into a fight with this other group over their rival football teams, which I'm assuming here are American soccer.
Yep.
Everywhere else football, because heaven forbid we...
Yeah.
Lars was a fan of the Werder Bremens, and the other guys liked the Bayern Munichs. While nothing happened at the bar, really, I mean, they were yelling, but there wasn't a physical fight. Lars ended up leaving separate from his friends, and when they saw him the next day, he said the guys from the bar had attacked him. And some of his friends said it was men hired by the guys in the club, not the guys themselves. And then another version, which brings those together, said, well, actually, 4 guys from the bar attacked him first, and then apparently there was a second fight with a man they'd sent after him who was like possibly Russian. It was very complicated, and nobody knows. The group was due to fly back home that day, but Lars had gone to the doctor, diagnosed with a jaw injury and a ruptured eardrum. And the doctor,
that's painful.
Right, and especially if you're about to fly. And the doctor said he shouldn't fly due to the ear injury and the air pressure, all that good stuff, right? He was prescribed cefprozil, an antibiotic, to ensure the injuries didn't get infected, and this does come into play. His friends offered to switch their tickets, stay with their friend who couldn't go back home, and he was like, no, it's okay. I'll stay at a hotel. I'll switch my ticket. It'll be fine. So they headed home. He checked out of the more expensive resort and checked into a cheaper place near the airport, right? Makes sense.
As one would.
Called the Hotel Color Varna or Color, I don't know. Though he had no history of mental illness, Lars called his mom the next day, and he was whispering to her and saying somebody was trying to rob him. They're after me. They're trying to kill me. He asked her to cancel his credit cards. And from my understanding, I don't think she did. I couldn't find anything saying she did. She was like, what the hell's going on? Like, I'm sure she was terrified, worrying about he's alone in a different country.
Yeah.
He's been already beat up at least once by somebody. And now he's calling her and just terrified, whispering to her that somebody's after him. And then he texted her, kept saying, what is cefprozil? Find out something on cefprozil, which is that antibiotic he was on. That night, he was caught on camera walking up and down the halls. Now, this had, I think Alyssa Lamb, he would hide on the elevator. So all this is caught on the cameras inside the hotel, him just pacing. And then at 1 a.m., he left the hotel and came back around 2 a.m. Nobody knows where he was for that hour. The next day, he called his mom again, still raving about people being after him. And this time he said, they're getting closer. Right. So just imagine being his mom at this point. He checked out of the hotel and took a taxi to the Varna airport on the 8th, where he visited the airport doctor. Dr. Kostov said he was nervous and erratic, but that he was safe to fly. I was like, your ear is already better, like 2 days later? But okay. A construction worker walked in because a portion of the airport was under construction, and Lars yelled, I don't want to die here. I have to get out of here. His belongings were already on the ground, and that included his baggage, cell phone, passport, wallet, everything. Everything was in them. And he fled. There is actual footage, and I have a still photo from it, of him just fleeing through the airport, just racing. He is on full run in the still photo. And outside, the CCTV footage caught him climbing a fence and running off toward this forest. And then he's out of sight of the cameras.
Holy shit.
He was never seen again. They didn't find his body in the forest. They've never found him. So, gone. There are many theories about what went wrong and why he was acting this way. One is that he planned it all so he could start a new life. But this is often struck down by the fact that he had good friends, a mom who he's talking to the whole time who was supportive, and he left behind his wallet and his passport, which is a really shitty way of starting a new life.
Yes.
Another theory involves him running drugs or otherwise being involved in some manner of crime. Well, there's no evidence against this really, but there's no evidence for it. And this is mostly an attempt to justify the fact his body was never found because they're trying to figure out, did somebody kill him? Okay. His friends knew nothing about it. He had no drugs in his backpack or his, none of his belongings had anything drug related. Web sleuths have rallied behind the possibility of someone really having been after him. Specifically, they think the guys from the club were hunting him down. I'm like, really? Like, I know that, the football fans do get a bit cray in Europe, but that cray, you're going to kill somebody because you already beat him up. He lost, okay? He already lost.
Yeah, some people can't let go, but yeah, usually it's the person who lost, not the person who won.
Right. Like, why? Why can't, and there's nobody caught on the cameras looking sulky or threatening, and there's just nothing to indicate that this is true either, but people are really reaching. There has to be a reason why he was never found. So here's where it gets interesting. There are examples of antibiotics causing extreme psychosis. Very rare, but it can happen. In addition, nervousness and hyperactivity are known side effects of the specific medication he was on. However, I did find a video made by a doctor who revealed that he never filled his prescription for the antibiotics. So, there's this whole school of thought that it was the antibiotics, but this doctor, and this is the only place I saw this, but this doctor was doing a whole show on it, said he never filled that prescription. It's also been suggested that maybe he tried some sort of new recreational drug that sent him spiraling, but his friends, by now you'd think they'd be like, okay, shit, we tried acid. At this point, he's been missing for so fucking long.
Yeah.
That they'd say something, because you're not going to get in trouble for it. My mind goes to a concussion during the fight, some sort of head. I mean, he had clear head damage. Yeah. His jaw was busted. His ear was busted.
What is it? Closed head trauma?
But sure, yeah. And the doctor did address this in the video, stating that psychosis can be caused by a concussion, but it's very rare, and it actually usually happens much later. Not within a couple days, but we're talking months down the line it can cause. And I'm thinking that's more along the line of those head injuries that I talked about that were, like hockey players and stuff like that. The doctor also felt there would be obvious symptoms of the head injury, and surely the doctor that checked him out would have considered a head injury, considering the location of the other diagnosed injuries. Like, that's obviously something that this doctor would have looked at. Another one addressed by the doctor was something called first break or first episode psychosis, the beginning of a latent mental illness. Something set it off, and this was just the first time he was exhibiting the symptoms.
Okay.
So just because you haven't shown mental illness before does not mean that at 28 years old, it cannot come out for some reason. And as he pointed out, this addresses the odd behavior, but not the complete disappearance. While researching Lars, another name came up. So because his mom has continued, still to this day, continues to try and get his name out there and to keep the search alive, there have been many well-meaning but false reports of Lars sightings. One promising sighting was of a man found wandering near the Amazon forest in Brazil in 2017. It's about, I think, 2 years after Lars disappeared. The internet went wild with speculation that Lars had finally been found. Instead, the man who was clearly mentally ill and in a confused state would turn out to be a Canadian citizen named Anton Pilipa, whose story in itself was crazy. In 2012, at age 34, he disappeared amidst charges of assault and something to do with weapons. He was an anti-poverty activist, and I still don't know quite what that means, as his brother Stefan described him on a GoFundMe, and that GoFundMe is still available online, who had gotten into an altercation in late 2011. For the past 2 years, his family had been trying to get him help for schizophrenia. So he did have it, and it sounds like he had been on medication and gone off it, which is also extremely common. When he disappeared, his family put out flyers, asked the police for help, searched morgues and hospital, all those things that you would do. Nothing led to his location. Fast forward to 2016, where a Manaus police officer named Helenice Vidigal, a Brazilian born in Canada, spotted a disheveled, barefoot blonde man walking along the highway. He was confused and spoke no Portuguese, but when he asked for the RMNP, she realized, he must be from Canada. She took him to the hospital because he was in very bad shape and was able to do a search online and figure out who he was. And she went through the Canadian embassy and was able to reach his family in early December 2016. But before they could come out to get him, Anton had disappeared from the hospital.
Oh.
Because
God,
he wasn't in trouble, so the police couldn't hold him.
Right. But how heartbreaking for his family.
God, yes.
To say, we found him. Oh my God. And you can't fly to, was it Brazil?
Yeah.
You can't fly to Brazil in 2 seconds.
Well, no. And they had to do the GoFundMe because not only were they going to have to fly there and be able to fly both of them back, because the brother was going to go get him, but there were all these fees, the hospital charges, all this stuff. So he was doing the GoFundMe to try and get down there, and then brother disappears. But around Christmas, someone called in about a man walking along the highway once again, and this time he stuck around long enough for his brother to use the funds raised to fly from Toronto, Ontario, Canada to Brasilia. Anton had been about to go into the Amazon rainforest when they found him, known for having plenty of predators. What the police couldn't know then was that he'd already made his way through it, mostly on foot. In fact, when he left his home in Toronto on foot, he had only a small bag, which he would be robbed of at some point, and at some point he lost his shoes. Nobody knows when. He made his way from Canada through the United States and all the way down to Buenos Aires in Argentina.
Holy shit.
Which is, by the way, much farther south than where he ended up being found in Brasilia. So he made it to his...
like the continental...
So he went over 10,000 kilometers.
Oh my God.
Yeah. His goal destination was the National Library of Buenos Aires. When he got to the library after years of making his way through multiple countries, the library wouldn't allow him to enter without ID. He walked from Canada
to Buenos Aires.
Yep. And then they were like, no ID. Too bad. Can you imagine?
Wow.
Of course, his ID had been stolen with this bag of belongings. So he'd had no money. He'd scrounged from wild plants. He said he ate a lot of berries. He took clothing and food from garbage cans. And he did say there was kindness from strangers involved. So on that, despite the fact he had been roughed up and his belongings stolen, he said he mostly encountered goodness and kindness from strangers. Some of them gave him rides. Some of them gave him food, that sort of thing. And also part of his trek, he said that he could hide in supply trucks sometimes. And so he would get into a supply truck and ride that for a bit. Countries he trekked through included Mexico, Guatemala, Costa Rica, Panama, Colombia, Venezuela, Argentina, and Brazil. And he did all this without a passport. Though I'm not clear on whether he never had one or if it was stolen with his belongings. It sounded like he didn't have one.
Yeah.
So somehow he just made, and I'm like, but a person on foot,
yeah,
especially a white dude going the opposite direction, maybe not a big problem. I don't know. So he was happy to be back home, though upon his arrival, he was arrested for the missed court date and still has to go on the original charges.
Wow.
And I'm like, honestly, can we consider him punished or like shit? 5 years.
Wow.
5 years. He is back on medication for his schizophrenia, appears to be doing well, and I hope that the court takes all of that under consideration. When Anton was found, Lars had been missing for 2 years, Anton for about 5, while sadly Lars has never been found still. Most assuming he's dead, something maybe whatever break he was having, he doesn't know who he is and he's living on the street somewhere.
That could be.
And that is possible. Anton's return home after 5 years was incredible luck for his family. Again, like Stefan, the brother, said, while I had that hope, I had to tell myself he was dead. Because that is what authorities were saying. That is what, in general, people were saying. And so he basically came back from the dead. And he has this story of survival on over 10,000 kilometer trip on foot, most of it. And much of that barefoot. Yeah. When interviewed, Anton's brother didn't feel his brother had left to flee the charges, but rather due to this single-minded pursuit to get to that library. It was just something that had taken him over, and then he got turned away. So my resources are New Zealand Herald, which is so funny. I found the best information in a New Zealand article about a Canadian man found in Brazil. Global News, Anton's GoFundMe, Wikipedia, and all that's interesting.
Wow.
I feel like that's a pretty astounding trek. And I'm like, and people, there's some survivalist who's like, he's lying. That's not possible. And also he was blonde and very pale and he would have stuck out. And I'm like, well, he did get his ass beat. So I don't, and he was in fact found in Brazil. So either way.
Yeah. And I mean, he wasn't walking down the major highways.
No, but he's like, he shouldn't have been able to make it through the Amazon. He should have been eaten in there. And the thing is, this guy hasn't sat down and been interviewed. He hasn't done any of that. He's not trying to capitalize on it. He hasn't written, I would read the book. Oh, I would like to know what happened on this trek, right?
I would read that book.
No, he hasn't tried to capitalize on it. And so what do they think is his incentive for this? He didn't go to the press. He hasn't spoken to the press. His brother briefly spoke with the press just to update. But he said, my brother is not well enough to talk to you. Huh. And he hasn't capitalized on it. So what do they think his incentive is? His motivation to be lying? I don't know. Maybe he got more rides than we think he did. Maybe he was able to hide in supply trucks to get over borders. I don't know.
That could be.
So, yeah, it's interesting. I would love to know more.
If you depending on where the supply truck is going, I'm thinking if you can get inside and hide between things and sleep. I mean, if you've been walking for a continent.
I'd be dead.
Yeah. Yeah. Maybe he did go quite a ways in the supply trucks. Wow. That's kind of, but I feel so bad for the other guy who was obviously terrified if he ran out of the airport.
Oh, yeah. And again, that picture is like full body, like just everything. He was obviously running very fast is what I'm saying.
As fast as he could. Yeah. Wow.
This was a serious run. And to disappear into and those woods that nobody has said those, it's not the Amazon. it wasn't something like that, but then his body could just be, might have gotten pretty deep into it. Who knows? And maybe it's in a spot where people don't hike a lot. And
that's true. And if you fall into a hole,
it happens all the time.
Yeah.
Pacific Northwest, so many bodies in those woods. So many bodies.
Well, we've talked on here before about somebody will go missing and there's a big manhunt and they look in some national park and they find
5 other bodies.
Yeah, and they're like, oops.
Well, that's the thing. If you've ever seen images of when bones are found, the images you're not looking at it. It's clearly a bleached white skeleton.
No.
That's not how it works. The animals have scavenged and scattered things all over the place. It is darkened. It is covered by leaves. So or plenty of people can hike past there and not see it. And if they see it, not recognize it. If there's not a human skull there, they might look and go, well, that's probably a deer or whatever is dead. Like, I've seen so many deer bones around here. Like, any one of them could have been human, perhaps, except often they were still intact, fully on a, deer body in general.
Or there's a hoof at the end.
And then that's a big find out with the hoof. And then they go away really fast. I don't know if somebody disposes of them or they just get eaten up because they're mountain lions supposed to be still in there.
There's some little fox somewhere with a den full of his furniture is all made out of
that's funny.
Deer femurs.
Considering I went to a Geen thing in Grave Face Museum in Savannah. All right. So there you go. I didn't villainize those two white men. And they were very white. They were Canadian and German.
I cannot say the same.
Yeah. No. And who knows what their except for one was an anti-poverty, as I said to you before we started. Isn't everybody kind of technically anti-poverty? Like, what specifically does that sort of activist do? I assume fight for the rights of the homeless.
I would think so, because you can't like blow up buildings, because that's
then there's less.
That does not seem to follow along.
Yeah, so interesting. But yeah, that I would love to know more about that man's truck. I would love him just to grant an interview.
Yeah, let somebody tell your story.
Yeah, it'd be fascinating.
It would be.
But thanks for listening.
Yes.
Check us out on findmeacoffee.com/mmmayhem. And we'll talk to you later.
Talk to you next week. Bye. Thank you for listening to Mysteries, Monsters, and Mayhem.
Find us on Facebook and Instagram or at our website, mysteriesmonstersmayhem.com.
Please like, rate, and review, follow, and share wherever your favorite podcasts are downloaded.
Thank you for listening and supporting our podcast. We'll be back next week with more shenanigans.